Welcome back, you're watching Storyboard. Last October, Mindshare announced it was experimenting with moving from the traditional approach to targeting consumers through demographics to taste graphs using big data. At a time when measurement has never been so important, what is the media industry doing to ensure their clients reach their target audience in the most effective way? Shedding light on this debate, we have WPP's Rob Norman, Mindshare's Gowthaman, and Crayon Data's Suresh Shankar. Listen in.
Hello, there's the pretty side of advertising, the commercials we see and, the ads and stuff like that. But there's the underbelly which is not seen by us, and that's in the area of measurement, planning, buying, and there's some dramatic changes happening there. Today, to discuss what could lie in store, we have Rob Norman of Group M, we have Gowthaman of Mindshare, and we have Suresh Shankar from Crayon Data. I'll begin with you, Rob. So, where is measurement going and where is demographics going?
So, it's clear that we're going to move from a sample-based world to a census-based world over time. The technology is available to us, it's becoming increasingly available across the market, so that's where it's going. Demographics remain useful because it's helpful to understand the attitudes and broad behaviors of cohorts, and it's a good shorthand for that. But over time, we will move to the measurement of the behavior and consumption habits of individuals, and I think that's an inevitable destination. But there will be a lag between the time that some of that is data is available for some of the people and its ability to be applied directly as currencies in the market.
Right. Gowthaman, Rob talks about it's inevitable, however there's a lag. So how do you view that?
I think that's one of the fundamental problem we have right now, because especially in this part of the world where we are still using both the platforms of offline and online, when it comes to actually managing the campaign, the lag means that you're not having a coordinated, integrated communications plan. So it willy-nilly slows down a fast-moving truck to a slower bullock cart, in reality, to manage the campaign. But we have to exist with both the platforms and find a way in which there are some common variables that is linked to both and push them fast enough so that you see the campaign in full speed and full spirit. So that's the challenge.
I'm going to stay with you. So just describe to me, today we are planning based the old demographics of age, gender, location, income, and so on. So where do you see that moving? And if you can make that for dummies kind of answer and explain to my viewers where this is headed.
The current view is that the standard definitions of the age, sex, income, and occupation kind of variables and its relevance to actually attributing to a marketing sale or closing the loop in a purchase, to my mind, is now getting weaker and weaker, because the time a person decides to buy a product to the time actually goes and buys it, in the journey, a lot of things are happening with it, which is not a demographic intervention, but a lot of other interventions through influencers, likes, his context in which he is purchasing it. Those variables are becoming very, very important. Unfortunately, we're not capturing that last mile intervention. And unless until we capture that, on top of the demographic layer, you will always have this variable of demographics looking very, very weak, because when the marketers overlay investments to the sale, a demographic variable is not showing any relationship, whereas the other things are showing a lot more bigger relationship now. That's the stress. And we have to overlay both. Those variables are coming in the form of influences, likes, and the context in which the person is doing it. Because I would like to go out of my house to buy a particular product because I like the product, I've been aware of the product. But when I go to a shop, something else happens and I choose to buy another one because it's interesting.
Right.
So that's the stress.
Right. Suresh, you're a lot darker than Rob is or Gowthaman is, in the sense you speak of depths of many things. So can you describe the depths we're going to see?
So first of all, it's kind of interesting. I worked in Indian media last about 17 years ago, and I haven't worked very much in the media business since then. But when I come back now, nothing seems to have changed. At that time, we were debating people meter versus diary. Now we're debating one measurement system versus another, and everything seems to be the same. Unfortunately, I think the world of the consumer has moved on. And Rob talked about moving from demographics or sample based to census based. My point is this: I think the one thing that has really changed the world fundamentally is that today everything is done on the mobile, and the mobile allows us to track things with unprecedented fidelity. I know where you are, I know what you're using, I know what exactly you're going to do. Increasingly, everything I do about how I consume media, how I buy stuff, everything is happening on that mobile device. And when I can capture, like I said, unprecedented fidelity, right down to microseconds, right down to a few meters of where you are, the whole idea that you want to target based on some television show and a few thousand people and a few meters is obsolete. So I actually think that these things will die. Not that measurement will die, not that planning will die, not that buying will die, but the way in which we're doing measurement, the way in which we're using demographics, all of this is going to die. And demographics is, again, as Rob said, I think it's going to be useful, but the whole model came about in an era when we didn't have good enough census. So I needed a shorthand. So I say, okay, I want people who are 24 to 35 doing something. What happens now is that that kind of stereotypes people. So you assume that people between 25 to 34 are male who live in some place will behave in a particular way. But look at yourself, look at Rob, look at any of us, right? We're all, we contain multitudes in ourselves. I can be young in the way I choose to dress. I can be conservative in the way I used to eat. So there are many different aspects of that, and all of this is what I think is you need to capture today if you really want to understand the consumer. And that's a much more complex set of variables. And that complex set of variables can actually be measured using what is essentially becoming a very highly censored world, where there's going to be 500 billion sensors around in the world in another few years, which, as I said, can allow you to measure things with the fantastic fidelity. And so that's really where the future is going, and I think that's why demographics, samples, all of these are dying.
Yes, Rob.
You, like me, are a digital dreamer. And that's a good thing, and it's always nice to be with fellow dreamers, especially when we're in India. And I think we have to, for the audience's benefit and for the benefit of the advertisers, to understand there's something of a reality check. And whilst I, like you, believe that the mobile device is the bridge to the internet for large parts of the population, and that the mobile device is a compelling device both for data consumption and media consumption and measurement, I think it's also reasonable to at least take a check and think about the available bandwidth in India and many parts of the world and understand what the reality of the consumer experience is for most people. We don't live in a world of ubiquitous 3G, let alone 4G, and the experience, even in the relative comfort of a nice hotel in Jaipur, of what the real consumption experience of media is, of video in particular, is not what many of us think about it as being when we sit in our high fidelity offices in New York or London or Mumbai. And so to think that we have got to a place, because of the prevalence of a device distribution, that changes fundamentally how the business operates in the short and very near term, I think is an error. And I believe that we have to find proxies for audiences and proxies for behaviors in things like demographics and psychographics, and that's why they'll endure for longer. And we all know what the end state is going to be, but the end state is not the now state, in my opinion.
So, Rob, staying with you, so what is the end state, and when do you see the end state being real?
Well, the end state is a perfectly addressable universe, and an addressable universe means that behaviors are ascribed to individuals regardless of their demographics, and their behaviors that are highly textured in terms of their consumption click by click or screen by screen, their consumption product by product and SKU by SKU in location by location. And that's clearly the end state. And when you can assemble all of those pieces and then produce creative assets that can be delivered in a timely manner through the purchase pathway, as G-Man implied before, then that is the end state. Now, in order for that end state to operate, you need to look at two things. You need to look at what the economically valuable portion of the population, so there's 1.2 billion people in India. My guess is that 250 million of those people represent 90% of GDP, and therefore 90% of the addressable advertising universe as it stands. And then look at that 250 million and say, when is that a mobile delivered 3G plus population? So my guess is it will take a full rollout of Geo, the development of 4G on other networks and so forth, which means that in order to get to, say, 50 to 75% of that 250 million, I suspect we're still 3 years out here in India to hit that number. And I think before we get to that number, we're still going to be dealing with a more realistic set of hybrid measures, which of course are a compromise, but a necessary compromise in order to not take us down a path of only thinking about the behaviors of a data elite rather than the economic value of the population overall.
Thank you, Rob. Well, lots of food for thought and lots of, shall we say, confusion about when things will really change. Thank you, Gowthaman. Thank you, Ram. And thank you, Suresh.
Thank you.
And before we go, some good news. The Overdrive Awards were held this week where Mahindra Scorpio won the Storyboard Auto Commercial of the Year. Here's what the winner had to say.
We've been the first, we'll be the first, we've done the new and more we must.
What's going to be the flavor of advertising this year?
Well, we always try to make clutter-breaking ads. So we will continue in the same mold even for the year ahead. We have a few launches coming up, as some of the people here know. So yeah, we will continue with the same work.
Congratulations, Mahindra. With that, it's a wrap on the show. Stay connected. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and of course, YouTube. I'll see you next week. Until then, thanks for watching.